Hello friends, welcome. This is Wurps, and I'm here to cover the melee weapons of the game a bit deeper than I did in the item guide itself, which was pretty much just a quick overview. Now, there are these 5 melee weapons in the game currently, and some of them have some pretty big issues. There are some obvious contenders, like the Sledgehammer is actually useful in some cases, even though its battery drain is decently high, but its cost effectiveness per hit is also good, dealing 150 damage and stunning. The stun is pretty much the most important part of the equation here because it can stun any enemy, as opposed to the frying pan, for example, being able to stun small enemies. And I believe small enemies is cut off at about the size of the frog. So the frog, the up scream, stuff like that, this should stun all of those. The duck, if you want to stun those. But the thing is, those are already pretty easy to kill because if you have a strength stacking carry in your lobby, 3 strength is enough to just grab those and throw them in a pit. So this sort of falls off immediately once you have 3 strength, and buying this costs about 3 strength from the start. So I don't know where this weapon fits in actually purchasing it to get an advantage, because this is not a cheap weapon. It's not an expensive weapon, but it's not a cheap weapon. I would just rather spend all of the money from purchasing the frying pan on upgrades, and I think it would just be better because this not only has the upfront cost, but it has a battery life. You have to recharge this thing. It's not even that good, but you have to constantly funnel more money into it, and the cost of the recharges keeps going up. So I think the frying pan is decidedly in the bad tier. This thing does only 15 damage as well. The tougher enemies have 250 health, Trudge having 500. You know how many hits that is? That's a lot. Tumble does 15 damage. This does a tumble. Like, you could tumble into them, and that is the damage of the frying pan. Ow. So it's like, and yeah. So this is in the garbage pile. Now, the sword is kind of a slightly better frying pan. Issue is, sword has a lot of the same issues with the upfront cost, the recharge cost, and it's just comparable to hitting something with a prop most of the time. Except, you know, you can carry it in your pocket, but then you have to use like specific techniques, you know, the unsheath walk forward technique to make it, you know, do its little slashy effect, which activates it, because you have to go above a certain like velocity. See, if I just flop it about like this, there's no trail, right? But if you swing it like at a certain speed, this is kind of how they envisioned it, I guess, then this would hurt them. Now this, I am in a single player game, and if I was even hosting this game, I don't think it would work this well. And if I was a client to a game where someone else was hosting, it definitely wouldn't work this well. So there is some physics limitations to be dealing with here. I do hope they tighten that up, allow maybe a little bit more client-side freedom in terms of calculating what are successful melee hits. But I don't like the sword. It does 50 damage, which is a lot higher than the frying pan, but the frying pan is terrible. So kind of weird comparison. Now, a clown, if you wanted to kill a clown per se, clown has 250 health. That is 5 sword hits. It's not that hard to kill a clown specifically because they're so predictable, and you can just, you know exactly what they're going to do, right? They do their beam, you duck it, you stab them, then you back up, you bait the kick, he kicks, you stab him again, you back up, and then you just repeat from there, and he will die. But you're paying money to do so beyond just the purchase of the sword, because it's going to be 5 hits, so that's 5 reductions in battery life, which means you're going to have to spend your extremely limited energy getting that back up. So the sword, like the frying pan, I would not use. I don't use. I've tried many times. It's like, it's kind of good for killing the small things, I guess, since they'll die in 1 or 2 hits, but landing 1 or 2 hits on a small enemy that's moving around rapidly and maybe approaching you, especially when you have a limited time to do so, is not easy. Like, if you had to stab this into an upscream that was running at you, your chances of successfully doing that are honestly pretty low, even if you use the correct techniques. So I'm going to put the sword in the garbage pile as well. Slightly higher than the frying pan, but yeah, pretty garbage. So the bat is definitely the best of the cheap melee weapons. Okay, we got some party crashers here. The bat is good primarily because it stuns pretty much anything and sends them flying, which will then cause them to take heavy impact hits, which are worth 25 damage each. I have noticed when I have hits on enemies with this bat that they take a chain of these hits. So not only am I dealing a decent amount of impact damage, the original impact damage is not that amazing, but they then take a ton of additional impact hits. So if you can make the enemy bounce around, your chances of successfully killing them with 1 or 2 hits is fairly high. So considering the bat doesn't cost that much, it's a pretty good purchase. So you look at him bounce around, he took another 25 there. I did 70 total with that hit. It was a little bit of a struggle. It only does 20 base damage, but I'm usually getting... What? Well, that was odd. I'll just start a new game, spawn a Griffin statue to force the end of the round, which will cause every monster that's designated to spawn here, spawn repeatedly. So if you want to kind of practice, this is probably your best bet. You just go to level 1, do the extract, and then just fight monsters. You will have to spawn things in using the mod off of Thunderstore, the item spawner, to do so. And I'm going to respawn the Sledgehammer and get the Inflatable Hammer combo, because that is definitely something I'm including. I came up with that meme tech for this, and I honestly think it has a little bit of potential. It's very niche, but it works. Okay, well, the duck is our enemy of choice. I mean, the ducks die to a sledgehammer hit. I can tell you that. Yeah, don't smash the orbs. I just do it for fun. I initially thought the sledge stunned anything, but it seems the heaviest weight class, the clown, trudge, and robe at 13 strength required to lift, won't get stunned by it. 150 damage is enough to 2-shot most enemies in the game. A trudge will not die in 2 shots. It will take 4 or 3 hits will get it to 50 health, and then you'll have to deal the last bit of damage somewhere else. The battery drain on this thing is pretty high, though, so you'll have to watch out for that. Okay, so back to the inflatable hammer here. Oh, you know what? First, I'm going to cover how the sledge can somewhat reliably be used for an overhead swing. Actually, wait, I don't want to whip him. Let's do the overhead only because I don't have any battery left. So an overhead swing is fairly viable if you get enough momentum. As you can see, that was not enough, and it is a little sketch to pull off sometimes. Maybe a whip swing throw would actually be the play here. Yeah, okay, so a whip throw was enough. It kind of varies. The overhead swings are weird, but they are fairly effective sometimes, especially since there's no downside to doing so. Like, if it doesn't work out, that got a few hits. He's going to get mad at me, isn't he? Okay, now for a funny little tech I came up with by chance when playing with my friend is the inflatable hammer is very light, and the roll drone, when put on an item, will pull the item towards you. This I found to be mostly completely useless, but in this extremely niche case, I could hold this as a dead man switch, and if I ever let this go, it will become an autonomous defense hammer, just flailing around me and potentially hitting anything near me or chasing me, especially chasing me, because that's the thing that happens. And this hammer has a chance to explode like that, which will hit for 250 damage. It doesn't even take much battery. That's actually the craziest part about this combo, is that these things normally are kind of useless alone, but together they form this little combo that actually kind of works. If you want to... Oh, okay. So I could just run around this guy and just, you know, just gamble. Oh. Well... It worked, but I also have God mode, and I'm in the pit. So watch out for that. Okay, so I've got here pretty much the top 3 of weapons. This is hilariously number 3 because of the combo. And, you know, honestly, this has its uses. Oh, right, I never even covered this. So this weapon does 2.5 damage, which is hilariously low. That is 100 hits to kill a usual enemy that's threatening, like robe, headman, all that stuff, 250 health. So the whole point of this is you hit the ground and you have like a 6%-ish chance, from what I've seen, to have that explosion happen. And this explosion is super strong. 250 damage will instantly kill everything but a trudge. So you could just walk around and gamble like this and try to trigger as many little squeaky squeaks as you can, or use the roll drone method. I mean, if you want, you could just whip this out and throw it. It's actually fairly easy to throw and will bounce around. If it happens to do an explosion on one of these bounces and kills the enemy, great. If it doesn't, you know, oh well, you'll grab it back later and you can try again. So this is kind of like, I don't know, just like a throwing weapon. I wouldn't use this in melee range. It's kind of a waste of time. But as a throwing weapon, it's quite effective. And especially with the rolling drone as kind of a meme strat, it is, okay, so hidden are really annoying, right? And hidden can chain grab you if there's multiple and like ruin your life, especially in solo. This is the one thing that can actually stop that. It is a hard counter to hidden. You put the roll drone on this thing. You change the freaking name of the roll drone to something weird in this mod for no reason. Item drone torque. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but still. So you put this on there and you grab it. Now, if a hidden were to grab you, you would automatically release this weapon, which would start it homing in on you. And if a hidden was carrying you away, this hammer would be beating the crap out of him. And a fairly decent chance that this thing will trigger and explode at some point, multiple times even maybe, killing the enemies. And it doesn't kill you, which is the nice part. So you can just freely walk around with an aura of explosions, barely taking any battery life. This is super goofy, but honestly, I enjoy this greatly. Oh, okay, anyway, yeah. So hammer, actually pretty decent. What the hell? Okay, wait. Get him, hammer. Come on. Don't fail me now. That is a multi-frog kill right there. But as for overhead throws, they are fairly doable. And I would recommend at least practicing this because you can just toss these things. Like, the bat was active during that entire throw. If he didn't hop away, he would have got there. You may have to do whip throws in some circumstances. That was not enough. Needed a little more momentum there. So really, I would say the key to throwing weapons, if you want to do an overhead, is get just enough momentum so it starts to swing back a little and then throw it forward. If you just do it while looking straight up, you usually don't have enough momentum since you can't look straight up. You can only look at a somewhat high angle. If you start from here and throw it, it's kind of iffy on if you'll get enough momentum. It's possible, but it's iffy. Little whip throw. Pretty nice technique. Definitely requires some practice. But the risk-reward ratio on throwing melee weapons is excellent because you risk almost nothing. You can't actually lose a melee weapon. You can only have it misplaced. Even if a weapon falls down a pit or you can't find it, you will get another one respawned on the truck after you leave. So throwing melee weapons, kind of amazing. Does it take some practice? Definitely. Is it worth it? Also definitely. There is also the simple unsheath, the walk forward unsheath. The poke, whatever you want to call it. Now, I have my middle mouse click bound to take out my first weapon as well as a secondary binding, which I used to do this a little easier. Now, if you don't have much experience doing the other things and you just want a usable way to hit something, you could just do the walk forward and unsheath technique. And if you do it at the right distance, might hit. I don't know if frogs are immune to it, but yeah, it helps if you sprint as well, probably. The best way is, of course, to just practice, go to Thunderstore, get the app, download the item spawner mod, the God mode mod, and honestly, that's enough. There is no monster spawner mod right now, so you kind of have to do it manually, which I do by ending the extract, which will make monsters spawn rapidly. And that's pretty much the best you can do. You can't choose which monsters you fight, but it's something. And that gets you a lot more experience than the equivalent of just doing it manually and fighting things in a massive risk environment. Just to put it all in one section, the total amount of melee techniques I have is pretty much 2.5. Now, okay, so we have some modifiers. We have the unsheathing, which is just the act of taking it out of your inventory, which will allow you to do the walk forward and hit technique in some situations where you can see it activating. There's also just the holding it out regularly and then running forward. You can sometimes trigger it. You can also just do the whip from any position. It's just a little more convenient to be able to control it very precisely with where you unsheath it. If you just walk around with the weapon, you also risk hitting yourself and teammates. So I pretty much never do that. If I want to hit something, I will approach, decide which method I want to use, and then do it. Now, the last style of usage of melee weapons, besides the roll drone shenanigans, is definitely the throw. There's either the whip throw or the overhead throw. Your mileage may vary depending on your situation. Sometimes you're in a hallway and you don't have lots of room around you to actually do a whip. Sometimes you're in a very low area and you can't really do an overhead. So sometimes you might need to mix it up. You can't just do the same thing all the time as if you're in a giant room. Well, that would have hit if the tables weren't there, but you just gotta watch out for obstacles as they will mess you up. If I aimed that a little better, definitely would have worked. Yep, that had enough momentum. Overall, I do like the throwing the best out of everything, just because it's the safest. Even though it is also the most difficult, it is also significantly safer against the Huntsman, which is probably one of the more annoying enemies that will really get in your way and slow the game down to a glacial pace. And throwing a bat at him is a pretty good way to get rid of him without having to risk your life. Because if you sneak up to a Huntsman like this and just try to hit him, if it doesn't register, he'll kill you. And it's that simple. So I would rather just throw something at him and then get the hell out of the way. And if it hits, great. If it doesn't, I'll go and pick it up. Thanks for watching. Check out my other guides. I'll see you next time.